Alright, so I think we're up and running. Um, Hi guys, and welcome to another week of interactive level design. I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Richard, and I'm working for Clever Endeavour Games. We make games. We're working on a 2D platformer where you build the level as you play, and this stream is going to be about, it's going to be about the one-player mode of this game, which is a puzzle mode where you're given certain blocks and you need to place them in the level, so you need to help build the level to get to the end. So, um, I will show you what I'm going to do today, which is I'm going to go ahead and draw out a level. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing and draw just sort of sketch out what I think the level should look like. Then we're going to open up Unity, and don't worry if you haven't seen Unity or don't know what it's about. I'll explain what I'm doing in there. So we'll open up Unity, we'll make the level in Unity, and then we'll run through it, see if it works, change it, etc. I invite you guys to give me feedback, anything you think, if I have good ideas, bad ideas, if you think that's great, if you have anything to add, just put it in the chat box and I will answer you as quickly as I can. If you guys wanted more info on the game, I'll just type in the URL for the game on our website. That way you'll be able to check it out. One sec, that might have been the wrong one. Give me just 1 second. Alright, here we go. So there's the right URL. So if you guys want to check out the game or find out some more about it, you can do that over there. So first things first, I'll show you a sample level because I figured I would explain how the one-player mode works, the puzzle mode works. So let me just show you an example of that. I'm just going to stick the earpiece in and check, see if the audio is working properly. Alright, so audio seems to be working. Great. Let me know if there's any weird looping. We've had some issues last time with the audio of the Unity track. The Unity scene was kind of looping and being annoying. Anyway, so the point of the game is to get to the end. So you start out at this green flag and you end at the red flag. The flags will probably change, and certainly the background and the art in this level will change. I just set it up this way because it's easy to see everything and you don't have to worry too much about moving around background assets that are going to change, etc. So you have to place the blocks. So we get these 3 blocks that we can place, 1 smaller one and 2 bigger ones. And we have to place them somehow to get to the end of the level. So let's give it a shot. So we go here, here, and here. You play as a chicken or a horse. There are other characters that you'll see soon. You can also wall jump. So one of the things that's kind of cool about this is that when you're placing the blocks, you can actually use them to block projectiles, let's say, or you can try and use them in more than one way. So maybe I'll put this one here to block this projectile, makes this jump easier, and then might have an easier time. So you can see what that did. And now I can stand on this platform pretty safely. And, oh no. Anyway, so that's the point of the game. What we're going to do today is we're going to design a level that introduces another mechanic. So if you check out on the left side of the screen here, you should be able to see different blocks. Actually, no, I'll just move it over here. You should be able to see different types of blocks that we want to introduce into the game. So the goal, part of the goal of the puzzle level, is to introduce all the different blocks that we're going to be using throughout the game, so that then in the multiplayer mode, which is a mode where you build the level as you play and you take turns placing blocks and running through the level and trying to finish it, one of the goals of the single player mode is you introduce these things so that when somebody plays the multiplayer mode, they're not completely lost as to, what are all these blocks and what do they do. So you can see I put them up here, some of the blocks that we're going to try and introduce. So if I just read through them, so you have basic platform with different sizes, nails, which you can put on platforms, which will kill the player, a spike ball, which is obviously a death hazard, moving platforms, horizontal, vertical, rotating ones, etc. So there's a whole bunch of these things. What I'm going to work on today is the key and lock. So a key and lock, the idea is that you have a chain link or like a wall that's locked, and then if you get the key, then the wall disappears. So what this does for our level design is it adds a whole bunch of different things that you can do, because it brings in the idea of needing to make choices of going for the key. Maybe it makes you need to place other blocks to be able to go for the key, and then get back to somewhere with the lock. So the first thing we want to do is want to introduce this mechanic very sort of basically. We want to show people that this is something that exists and that can be used. I'm just going to move this over. So we want to show people that this is something this is one of the mechanics that they can use. We don't want to necessarily overwhelm them with something that's incredibly difficult, so we're going to go find a simple way to introduce this. So what I propose, and of course give me your feedback on this, is to do a simple kind of loop. So the player is going to start on one side, could be top, bottom, any of the corners really, and they're going to have to try to get back to, they're going to have to open somewhere with a key, and then they're going to have to go into there to get to the end. So my thought is maybe we have, they start over here, and then they'll end maybe over here, and this area will be blocked off with a lock. So I'll just put that there so you can see. So that side will be locked off, and then the key we can put maybe on this side, and they're going to have to go, get the key, come back. Right? So my thought is that we can make it kind of separate the level into two pieces. So there's the bottom half over here and the top half over here, and we're going to try to make them make some sort of decision of whether they want to go back via, when they go there, they're going to choose one path either below or above, and then on the way back they're going to have to choose if they want to go back through the same one or a different one. One of the ways that we want to kind of challenge the player, let's keep in mind also this level is not going to be one of the first 10 probably. This is probably aiming towards level 15 to 20. So we can make it a little bit more difficult than, just a basic like, okay, place platforms and then come back. So we have to choose in doing level design is also which blocks we're going to give to the player. So the challenge in this game, in designing this game, is that we have to give the player certain blocks, and we have to try to force mechanics onto the player, even though we're giving them the means to change the mechanics. So what I mean by that is in a regular platformer, maybe you'll have, a regular platformer, maybe you'll have the player start here. Let's just say, I'll just change the color for this. Okay, so maybe in a regular platformer you'll have a player start here, and then you'll have some spikes, and then you'll have something that shoots projectiles here, and here, and here, and they have to get to the end here. Great. So then the player knows that they have to jump over this in timing with the projectiles so that they can run across before the projectiles come down. Great. That's something that adds, basically they're adding pressure to the player because they're telling him, okay, you have to time yourself and you have to avoid this obstacle. That's great, except in this kind of game that we're designing, it's very easy to go around some of these mechanics because you can place blocks wherever you'd like. So maybe the designer, me, will be thinking, okay, they should jump off this and then wall jump here and then wall jump here. But realistically, they're going to choose to ignore that and just go up somewhere very easily, or place one block or do whatever. So what we have to do is be very careful in the blocks that we're giving to the player, in order to make sure that we're introducing the mechanics that we want to introduce. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Go back to black and white. And if you see me keep glancing to the right, it's because I have another screen that I'm checking my the stream on to make sure it's still on and actually functioning. Alright, so where are we at? We're designing this level to so the player has to go get the key and then come back to the beginning. Now, what I propose is making this area, let's draw it in gray. So this area will be hard. This area will seem easy and will seem like it's a good, like it's something that's going to be simple. But really, it's going to end up being more difficult. So let's see if that works out. If not, we can always change. I mean, this is the whole design process, right? I'm showing you guys the process because something I try might not work, and we'll have to try it again. So I'm just drawing this out here. So hard, let's give them, first of all, a couple of choices to make. So first off, let's give them a block, 2 blocks. So I'm just going to write them over here. 2 collapsing blocks. So what these are is they're, I believe, 2 by 2 or maybe, sorry, 1 by 3 or 1 by 2. And they're blocks that fall down and collapse as after you jump on them. Okay, so we'll give them 2 of these, which means that then it's going to sort of dissuade them from going back the same way they came, because let's say they put them here and here. Well, if they step on them, then they're going to disappear, so they can't come back the same way. So that's a decision I'll have to make. Over here at the bottom, all this is, if you fall down here, you die. So that's something that's important to take note of. So why don't we make this a little more difficult? Let's put a couple of obstacles in here. Why don't we put a spiky block here? And sure, that'll make life a little bit more difficult for them. And then what we want to do, I mean, there's no ideal solution for the level, right? But we can decide, okay, maybe I want to say they're going to go from underneath, they're going to get the key, they're going to come up top, and then they're going to have to go in here. Actually, come to think of it, given that we're placing the ending here, it might be a good idea to try to get the player, well, one of the good solutions would be to force the player to place a block here that they can use at the beginning to get up, and at the end, or at the end to come down. So let's see what happens. If we put some spikes here, right, then this will make it so that the player can't just jump and hug the wall and try and get in there afterwards. Hopefully that makes sense. So this spike is going to stop that. So that's going to try to force the player to put a block here so that they can land on it and then go in from there. That makes sense. So let's get to it. So what else should be on top here? Let's make this a little bit more difficult. And also give the player a means to use the platforms. In previous levels, we will have introduced using platforms to block projectiles. So maybe we can do that as well here. So why don't we put a cannon that's going to shoot an arced projectile like that. So let's put a cannon there. and let's put another one up here. So then you're going to end up with one that goes like that and one that goes like that, which should annoy the player sufficiently. And then they'll have to make a decision of, do they want to block that? You know what, actually let's put 3, so it makes it even harder. They'll have to make the decision of if they want to block that with a platform, or if they want to try to use the platform to get maybe back the same way they came and forget about this stuff entirely. Let's make it a little bit more difficult as well by moving the key up to here and placing something that shoots projectiles over here. So they'll have to time themselves on the way up to be able to get the key and avoid this projectile. The other thing is that the projectile is going to be going here, right? So the player is going to have to, either keep jumping or put a block there to stop the projectile. So let's see. That seems like a decent idea. Like I said before, remember the seems easy thing? I don't think it seems easy. This one doesn't seem particularly hard, but I think we're going to get a decent feel, because you could really go either way, from the top or from the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of those. Now let's see what other blocks we're going to give them. So if you were playing this level, then you have these 2 collapsing blocks. You might think, okay, here and here, that makes sense. You jump on this, it collapses. You jump over this, here, it collapses. You jump up, you wall jump, you land here. But then you're going to get some trouble, because you have these 3 projectiles, and you have this projectile, and all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more difficult. Let's add a couple of blocks to help the player out, and then probably remove them once once we see that it's too easy. So let's give them one little block, so that's just a 1x1. That's going to be able to help them either get back the way they came or block some of the projectiles. But I want to make it possible to come back the way you came, and in fact I want to make it maybe even the better idea to come back the way you came, even though it seems pretty logical that you would go around, that you'd go all the way around. So let's give them one other platform. How's this? Why don't we give them one platform? So this is another idea. If we go on the list of platforms, we have a 1x1 block with spinning spike. You guys should be able to see that on the screen. So you have this 1x1 block with a spinning spike. That's going to be annoying for the player, and then what hopefully giving them one of those, what that's going to do is we're going to give them the option of, okay, make it a little more difficult, but possible to get back the way you came, or just forget it, don't place that block at all, or place that block somewhere, you know, far away, and then try and go maybe the harder route. But well, I guess we'll have to see what happens. So let's just draw that out now. So we're going to give them, I'll draw it like that so you can tell. And now we're going to go into Unity, and we're going to try to open that up. So that was on level 7, forget that. Let's open up key and lock. So I already set up the Unity scene kind of broadly. So you can see here I have the Unity scene set up. The way that we're doing this is I'm kind of using a template in terms of my level design. I'm using a template which is a very basic level. It has just the basic elements that I need, and then I'm going and throwing together new levels based on that. So the background is a temporary background for now, and we have 3 different basic types. So there's green, which is a collider. It's just a basic collider that the player is going to land on. We have blue, which is a boundary, which is something that the player can't wall jump off. They still collide with it, but they can't wall jump off it. So the idea is to use that at the end of levels like this, so that the player can't necessarily use the end of the level, but they're not going to fall off the edge of the world. And the last one is red, which is hazard, which means if you touch it, you die. So that's something you can use for the bottom of the level, or if you have, I don't know, traps or anything like that. So if you guys are just joining, I'll just do a quick recap. I'm doing level design for the one-player version of our game called Ultimate Chicken Horse. And the one-player version is a puzzle mode where you're given certain blocks, certain platforming blocks, and you have to choose where to place them in order to get to the end of the level. So let's get right to it. So this is the level that we're trying to design. There's a bunch of elements in here that I'm going to show you in Unity. So let's just start out quickly. So we've got this. I'm also making sure I'm aligning it to the grid. You can see the grid here. Making sure I'm aligning to the grid because of the way that blocks are placed. I'll show you that in a moment. So let's start out over here. Alright, so that'll be our start. Where's my start flag? So that'll be our start. And now you can see if, I just want to check the camera collider. Yeah, we're also using something called a camera collider. You see this green box on the outside? So the way our level is set up is such that the camera can only go inside the bounds of this green box. And so I'm going to change this green box to fit the size of the level. You can see now it's close, I believe. Yeah. Alright, so there we go. So you can see the collider lines up nicely with the end of the level, and in the Y direction, the same thing. So now the whole background is as far as you can go. Now if I were to play, then I forgot to get rid of the invisible. So we have a script called invisible, which makes all of these colliders and things invisible, so that when we have actual art assets in the scene, then we're going to be able to, obviously you can't see the colliders, but you'll just see the rock or tree or whatever it is you're jumping on. So right now I'm just making them invisible so you can tell, and you'll start here. So that's just showing you how we can place the start flag and place the collider. And you could obviously jump on these colliders. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to try and do is set up this part. So I'm going to delete that, and I will show you. Actually, I'm wondering, if this works. I can try to have the Unity scene open as well. Nah, never mind. Forget it. I'll keep the scene the way it was. Alright, so let's move this around, and so this is where we're going to set up the platform for where the lock is. So 20. Just going to set this boundary to be the end of the level. So now it's right at the end. And this, I can always just copy paste my colliders and put them back. So now I have this little area where I'm going to put the flag. The problem is you can't get to the flag because what we're going to put here is a lock, which we will turn sideways. And again, align it with the grid. It's not quite as important for this one because you're not actually jumping on it, but the idea is that you could. So I'm going to put some chains as well. And the way this asset works is the lock is set up so that when you grab the key, the lock disappears. We'll obviously be putting in an animation and so on for that, but at this point there isn't anything. So once you get the key, this thing is going to disappear. Let's just set this up. Right, so the lock is set up, and now you can see if sorry, my controller's having issues connecting. 1 second. Alright, so we should be able to see, actually, forgot to do something. I'm putting all of the lock chain assets inside the lock because the lock is the one that has the code that says disappear if the key is gotten. So here, let's just put a key in there, and then I associate the key with the lock. So that's something that's set up on the scripting side, so that I can associate the key with the lock, and the lock will disappear when the key is gotten. Now, let's make all these guys kinematic. So making them kinematic basically means that they're not going to fall all over the place. Beforehand, if I had pressed play, they would all basically have gravity and just sort of fall down and not collide with anything. Now we're making them kinematic. So let's see if this works. Now, if I don't get the key, you can see there's a wall there. If I do get the key, this should work, then it disappears. Then I can go in. Cool. So that part works. So now we want to move the key to the other side. Let's just put this boundary here. So this hazard we said is going to be the bottom. We're going to make it a bit wider. So now if you fall down there, then you're going to die. The key, we can move over here like we had said. I'm going to set up one more collider, which is going to be in the middle here. It doesn't have to be too tall. It could be like that. And we're going to maybe set it up like this. So again, this kind of stuff, part of the level design process is really just going to be about iterating. So we try something, see if it works. Ideally the design is made so that the level will work the first time, but of course there are little changes that have to be made to make sure that it's fun and make sure that it's possible. So I'm going to put those nails there like we discussed. Oops. I'll put nails over here. That'll sort of make the player, this will stop the player from jumping off this collider we see here on the right and just trying to jump straight in. So maybe they'll be influenced to try to use another block. Alright, so let's go back to this. Let's see what we wanted to do here. We have this part is set up already. Great, this part's set up already. The key is there. This collider's there. We need some cannons, we need a projectile, we need a spike ball, and then we need to decide what we're giving the player. So, a spiky ball, let's throw that in there. Now, the way our controller is set up, the player can jump about 9 blocks to one side. So let's say, just for example, if I make this 9 wide, then this is the distance the player can jump. So if we look at this in this terms of this level, that's probably going to be a little bit difficult. So maybe what we want to do is bring the key a little closer, make this a little smaller, put this in the middle, and that'll make our lives a little bit easier. Afterwards, I can change the background so that it fits properly with however big we want the scene to be. That's not a big deal. So let's put this guy here, and let's actually move the boundary in to here. Now we said we were going to put a projectile shooter. That's something I put over here the wrong way. There we go. Now I want to make sure the projectile shooter is going to be just above where the platform is, that they're going to stand on, right? So we want to line this up along the grid. Maybe we can move this up a little bit. So that can be 1. No, that can be 0. And now the projectile shooter should be nicely aligned. And I'll just make sure this... Alright, that's the next thing. The next thing we said we're going to do is put a couple of cannon shooter things here, little catapults. So why don't we do that? Maybe one here, and one here. You can always change the intervals and things of how they fire. So now, one of the things that we set up, first of all, I'm going to put all these things into the level object. So this is just in Unity the way that I'm going to keep myself organized. I have the puzzle controller, which is overall basically how the game works. And then the level is, inside the level I'm going to have everything that I need that's actually a piece of the level. So then in here you see the level geometry, which is all of these colliders, so the blue, the green, etc. And then I have whatever else I need, the background, the projectile shooters, the nails, the lock, anything like that. So let's see how it is with... Sorry, I guess I should go back a second. It could do that. We haven't looked at the animation or anything yet, so it's at this point. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just answering a question. Somebody asked, when the lock disappears, will the chain dangle like a real chain? It definitely could. We haven't looked into animations or anything yet. Right now, it just disappears because it's just sort of proof of concept, but it's not a bad idea. So why not? Alright, so the way the puzzle controller is set up, we give the player certain pieces, and you can choose those pieces. I don't know if you guys can see, it's pretty small, but you can choose those pieces from a whole list of blocks that we have. And right now, let's see what happens if we just give the player a couple of big... You can choose how many they get and which ones they get. So you can... Let's see if we just give them 3 big planks. The idea for this is just to see what the level looks like. So not necessarily be able to finish it properly. Oh, I forgot to make that kinematic. Right, so we start out here. We want to get to the end, and we have to get the key first. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Okay, so let's put one here, maybe one here, maybe one here. Okay, so that's good. The projectile is shooting where we want it to shoot, so it's going to have to be avoided. And then we're going to have to get the key. That should help. Now we've got these 3 tennis balls falling. You can't see them so well because of the background color, but obviously that background is going to change. So then it becomes a difficult level, obviously. Alright, that's not so bad. I think I'd like these tennis ball shooters to shoot a little further, perhaps. And and maybe at a bit different. You see there's three of them that land at the same time, right? So that it gives you sort of a wall. Here, let's take a look at that again. So if I just go here, sure, let's put that there. You can see all three of them are shooting kind of at the same time. That's fine, but it doesn't make life super interesting, because then it's basically like you may as well be just shooting a wall out. So why don't we change the interval on these guys, or at least the initial delay. So I'm going to change the initial delay to 0.2 seconds on this guy, and the initial delay on him to 0.6. So this should give us a bit more variety in the way the projectiles are being shot. Now let's try this again. Damn it. Here, maybe I'll go the other way. Might be easier. So, yeah, you get a much more interesting kind of, you know what, let me actually just do this. This way. Alright, let me try this one more time. This way I'll be able to block the projectiles over there, so that won't bother us. Now we can just stand here and look at the way the catapult's being shot. So you see you have these three, and now it's a little bit more challenging, first of all, and a little bit more interesting, because the timing is not so clear cut as like, okay, everything's happening at once. Now had I gotten the lock before, that chain would have disappeared, and I would try to time myself to run through and not die, which is difficult. Cool. So let's make this a little more difficult. Now keep in mind that this level is obviously not at the beginning of the game. This is a little bit later, so the player's gotten used to things like the spiky ball, these cannons that shoot out tennis balls, collapsing blocks, etc. They've gotten used to some of these mechanics. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them something a little more difficult. Let's give them, where is it? A collapsing block, which I don't see. Oh, here we go. So we give them two collapsing blocks, and we said we'd give them one small 1x1 block, and we also said we'd give them something else. We also said we'd give them a spinning block, spinning spike death thing. That is a good idea, actually. So somebody said make a combination lock, so the player has to figure out the combination, or a puzzle for the number. Yeah, well, it could actually be kind of interesting. This would have to be definitely later on in the game, but what could be really interesting is if you had something that was like you had to go find the combination somewhere to be able to open the lock, or maybe you had to find different pieces of the combination and put them together. So instead of it just being like, okay, you found the combination, or trying to remember it, you'd find like one piece of the combination, and then that number would show up and then would disappear eventually, and you'd have to remember it. The next time you'd find something else, that would disappear, and then you'd have to remember it. I don't know. There's definitely stuff we could do with that, though. It's a good idea. So let's take a look at this. I'm gonna maximize it. Let's take a look at how this is. Oh, never mind. Alright, I can't maximize it. So let's see how this looks. Ooh, that's not good. Oh, okay, that's fine. It's just a little bug that shows you the element. So the spike on the spinning spike on a block thing is being shown through, even though the other blocks are there. Anyway, that's just a little bug. No big worries. So let's do that. Let's try and place them the way I had said before, which was placing the collapsing block here and here, and then the one block is going to stop the projectiles, and maybe the spinning block, the spinning spike we can put here, and it'll try to block some of those projectiles. So that worked quite well. I'm actually kind of surprised. So now let's try and get that key. Now I believe we'll be able to land on this. That's good. Cool. So that was done. Now the lock area should be open, but now we have this whole mess to go through. Um, so had we not placed the spiky block there, we could probably come back the other way. Although realistically, this jump is too far, so we might have to give the player another block, because right now what you notice is we're really only giving the player one option, which is to do this, which is difficult, but possible. But the thing is, it's not very interesting because the player only has one option. One of the keys, in my mind at least, to good level design is to make sure the player is making meaningful choices that they can finish the level and say, oh, that was a good choice. What if I did it the other way? One of the other things we're going to add into this is, well, we're going to test it out. We're going to see if we're going to add it. Is a coin mechanic where you pick up coins to later unlock things or do other things. But the point is, we'll put coins in the level, and those will kind of guide you, but at the same time, they'll kind of give you a little bit of a more difficult path. So if you really want to pick up all the coins, you'll have to go for a more difficult path. So as opposed to something like Mario, where the coins are really there just to guide you, and they're there to show you which is the right way to go. In this case, what we would do is we would have something that's a little more difficult, so you can go the easy way, but you don't get all the coins. Then maybe once you finish the game, you're going to come back and say, hey, you know what? I really want more coins because I want to unlock this and this and this. Maybe I'll go try and do better now that I'm better at this game, and now that I know that I've mastered all the platforming side of the game. So let's give the player one more block, because I think this is, not that it's unfair, but it doesn't give them any sort of meaningful choice. So they have just this difficult bunch of catapult things to go through. What we could do is, if we give them one more, one by one box, or maybe let's go with a 1 by 2 box. What then they can do is, so this spiky block, this spinning spike thing, we're going to try the way of going back from where we came from. We'll put that there. The collapsing block can be placed like we did last time over here and over here. Then for the key, we actually aren't going to put this 1 by 1 block to block the projectile, because that's not the most important thing, right? For us, the most important thing now is going to be coming back the way we came. So let's put the 1 by 1 block down here, and the 2 by 2 over here. So what this is going to do is that if those blocks collapse, we at least have a second, sort of like a backup plan, right? So let's try and do this. Alright, so I'm kind of safe here. Now I'm going to try and get the key and then come back and land on this saw. So I have to avoid the projectiles, obviously, and I have to avoid this spinning saw. That worked surprisingly well again. Alright, so now I want to get back. Not sure if I can go over or under this spike block, but let's try over. Yes, nice. Cool. So again, kind of surprised that that worked, but that's relatively challenging and is something that, you can do it this way. Let's try now the same idea, but let's try going over instead of under. So the same platforms that we put before. We'll put this to block the projectile. We'll maybe put this one to block some of the cannons, and we'll put this one to block another one of the cannons. So that's going to make our lives a little bit easier at the end. Let's try this again. Cool. I want to go get the key. I'm going to land here, grab the key. Now we look here, and oh look, there's only one tennis ball that's being shot because we've blocked them with the other tennis balls. Sorry, we've blocked the other tennis balls with these platforms that you can see that we placed up there. Yeah, definitely. So somebody commented it would be interesting if there was a multiplayer mode where other players are the blocks and they place the blocks in the level. So the multiplayer mode actually is pretty much, well, it's almost that. Um, there's the multiplayer mode at this point is a mode where you take turns going through the level and placing blocks. So let's say I would place a block, and then you would run through the level, and then in a certain configuration of the level. So I would place a platform or whatever it is. I would run through it, and then you would run through it. Then the next turn you would place a block, and then I would run through it, and you would run through it. And the way it works is that if one of us gets to the end and the other doesn't, then you get a point. And when you get to a certain amount of points, you win. But that's an interesting idea, is to do a co-op multiplayer puzzle mode. So the same puzzles are set up. One person has to place the block and one person has to run through it. The only issue with that that I can see in terms of game design perspective is that you might just never want to be the one who's placing the blocks, or you might really try to like screw over your friend. So in terms of co-op, maybe it could be that you take turns. So one level, one person's placing the block, and the other person runs through it. The other level, the other person places the block, and the other person runs through it. Again, the issue with that is that it's an easy kind of hack to just have one person who's always placing if they like doing that, and one person who's better at platforming who can always platform. But I think it could add a cool dynamic of, if you take turns, it could add a cool dynamic of helping the other person to figure out where they should place the things, and that whole sort of couch time discussion. So I think this level works. We just showed that it works going from underneath or going from above. Both ways work well. So I'm gonna save it and call it a day. Well, not call it a day, but for this level at least. You'll also notice I named the Unity file key and lock. Originally I had puzzle levels named level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. I'm kind of redoing it and going over the different mechanics that we want to introduce. So you can see here, like I said before, there's all the different kind of blocks that I want to introduce. What I'm doing is I'm renaming the levels based on that, and we're going to order them based on when we want to introduce certain mechanics, how we want to introduce them, and how we want to build on them. So ideally, what we'll do is introduce the block as something the player can't control or doesn't have control over, and then introduce the block later as sorry, my Xbox controller is dying. So we'll introduce the block as something the player can control, and then later on as something the player can control. So let's say the spike, the spike ball thing that we showed, the thing that was spinning around the block, is something that the player is not going to have access to the first time they see it. They're going to be like, oh, what the heck's that? That's scary. And then later, maybe they're going to have to actually use, the next level or 2 levels later, maybe they're actually going to have to use that in some meaningful way. And actually jump on the platform and avoid the spike and so on. So it no longer is just an easy, okay, place some platforms and fill in the blanks. It's actually a little more intense. So that one is done. And so what I was just saying, based on what I was just saying, which is we introduce the basics of the mechanic, which in this case is pretty simple, right? You go get the key, it undoes the lock, you come back, and you finish the level. That's not so bad. Yes, so somebody said they have to go. Is it possible I can record this after viewing? Yes, I'm going to post it on our YouTube channel, assuming I watch it back and it doesn't look absolutely awful. But I think it should be alright. So I'm going to post it on the YouTube channel if you guys are interested in watching later. So you can just check out youtube.com/cleverendeavour, or actually I think it's Clever Endeavour Games. Let me just check that. I believe that's right. Yeah, exactly. Alright. So I'll just put the link there, so you got the link. If you guys want to check out the YouTube channel, you can go ahead and do that. And then if this is on YouTube, then you're going to see me saying that, and then it's going to be really weird because I'm talking about YouTube on YouTube. Anyway, next up, what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to save this. Save this in horse block and chicken, and I'm going to call this key and block. So I'm just saving that as a JPEG, and then I'm going to go with a new one. Close this. Oh, all right. So we have new image. The next thing, great. The next thing we're going to do is the same kind of design principle. I'm just going to go back and tell you guys. I don't know who's been staying here, who's newly showed up. But anyway, we're doing level design for a puzzle platformer game that we're working on, where you're given certain blocks and platforms. You have to figure out where to place them in the level, and then get to the end of the level. So you can check out more about the game. The link is in the Twitch chat, so you should be able to see that up at the top. You can get to that link and you can read a bit more about the game. So, without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this key and lock mechanic. So we just introduced the key and lock mechanic, which was basically you start in one place, you go to the other side of the level, you pick up the key, you come back to a gate that's now open or a chain that's now open, and then you're good to go to the end of the level. What I want to do is kind of step it up a little bit, and now we're going to use the same mechanic. So we've introduced the mechanic, and then the next level we're going to say, okay, well, how are we using this mechanic in an even more useful and interesting way? So to me, game design or in level design, the key is about interesting and meaningful decisions. If you feel like you've made an interesting and meaningful decision to reach the end of the level, you're going to feel more. You're going to be happier for having finished the level than if you've just done something that's, let's say, in a platformer kind of game that's just showing skill in terms of jumping and running and so on. There's certainly a place for that. If you've played like Super Meat Boy, then you know that that's a very exhilarating feeling of getting it right. But the goal for this game is to give a balance of the puzzle side, which is decision making, and the platforming side, which is actually the speed and the jumping and so on. The other element of sort of interestingness that this game adds is that the platforming stuff you make as hard or as easy as you want within a certain limit, but you make it as hard or as easy as you want based on where you place your blocks. So let's get into it. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to give the player the choice to get a key, but if they get the key, then they'll have to use another block. For example, let's just say they start over here again. There's a key up here, and there's the ending is, I don't know, here. Okay, so then they decide if they want to get the key. Now the only reason that makes there's any good idea to do that is, let's say we do this, and the key, actually that's not a good example. Let's say, okay, so this is just wall. Now, let's say there's two paths here. This one is locked, and this one is open. Maybe this one has a whole bunch of projectiles, and it's super difficult, but possible to do without a block, but still super difficult. Then the player has to choose, you know, let's say, are they putting one platform here, and trying to go the hard way? Or are they going, let's just change the color, or are they going to try and go maybe, you know, here, get the key, but then they're going to have a more difficult time getting over to here. So this is the kind of decision that we want to make the player have to make. And my way, I think, of doing that is going to be to give them, like I showed here, a hard way and an easy way. And the hard way is going to be open, and the easy way is going to be blocked by the key. But the easy way, you have to go out of your way to actually get the key. So it's going to make life a little bit more difficult for everyone. All right. So there's also the idea, I should also mention this, you know, in the last scene that we had, you could see pretty much the whole scene on your screen at the same time. That doesn't have to be the case, right? We could have a level that looks more like this, where, you know, the camera is maybe this big and follows the player, and the player has to jump over things, go under things, whatever, and get to the end of the level. that's something we can definitely do. So we can make these levels a little longer and more interesting. I'm going to use that model actually for now. Let's just change the canvas size. There we go. So now we have a little bit longer level. For some reason, I don't really know why, I'm a fan of starting in different places as opposed to always the bottom left corner or the top left corner, because that just seems to always be the case. So why don't we start over here? So we're going to start in the top right. Now we want to have two paths, or we could even have three paths, but let's go with two for now. One way is going to be blocked with a key, the other way is not. So let's go here. Let's try this. So we're going to have two ways of getting up. Oops, it's not straight at all. Going to have two ways of getting up in this section. So one way is going to be, I'll just draw this for the block. One way is going to be blocked, the other way is not going to be blocked. But this way is going to be more difficult. This way is going to be more difficult. And then to get to the end, yeah, okay. So the other thing is that if we're making the player use an extra block to have an easier time with the key, then it should probably give them some reward for having gone to get the key, right? Because that's what we want to encourage them doing. Actually, come to think of it, yeah, what we want to avoid doing is we want to avoid the player going the hard way and then having an easier time. Actually, sorry, no, that's what we do want to do. We want the player, if he goes the hard way, he or she goes the hard way, then they should have an easier time getting to the end of the level. So let's say we put a key down here. This means that you're not going to be able to get the key unless you place a platform somewhere around here. Alternatively, you don't have to place a platform. You could maybe jump straight here. You don't place the block, you don't get the key. You have a harder way up here, maybe some wall jumps, and we'll make that more difficult, you'll see in a second. But then you have an extra block that you can place over here. So maybe that'll be easier for you. Now, it obviously still has to be possible for the person who did get the key to place a block down here and still to be able to place a block later on in the level. It has to be possible, but maybe it'll be more difficult. So why don't we start with this idea, and to make things a little harder, let's put a projectile shooter here and here. So those are going to be along the walls, and we'll time them such that the person has to jump and avoid them. You'll see what I mean in a second. In this side, it'll be fine. Everything will be free and clean. Now we're going to make sure that you can't jump from here to here. So we're going to make sure that's too far. That's something that's relatively important. And what else are we going to do? So we're going to give the player a block that they could place down near where the key is. And we're also going to give them a block that they can place here in the middle somewhere. Why don't we get right to it and see what we can do to make this interesting in Unity. So, oops. So I'm going to go with, I'm actually just going to copy paste the key and lock Unity file. Actually, before I open it, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it key and lock 2. Then I'm going to open that up. The reason I'm doing that is just because it'll be easier to set this stuff up, because we already have the lock and it's already associated to a key and so on and so forth. So let's move some things around. We said we're going to start in the top right corner. Just make sure I can see the grid. Alright, so starting point will be there. Great. The key we said is going to be down below. Now I think this might be too tall, so we might want to avoid that. Let's change the size of the level. Let's change the size of the camera collider first of all. So that's the green box that you see around that is going to tell you how far the camera can actually move. So we're going to change that a little bit. Maybe make it shorter. Then this we can actually scale a little bit. Let's make it just a tiny bit smaller. Tiny bit bigger. Okay, that'll be fine. So let's move this down. Move this down. 22.5, 6. Alright, so that's our starting. We said we're going to put some walls here. So as you can see in the drawing here, what I'm doing now is making these walls. Now how low do we want it? Not super low, because you should be able to get there with one jump. 10 and 3.5. Great. That's one. Copy paste it. This will be not quite as tall, but let's still make it tall enough that it's useful. Now we don't want to. I don't want to make it too tall, because if I make it too close to the top, remember we said we were putting projectiles shooting downwards, so it's going to be like impossible to jump if it's too high. So let's make it just a teensy bit bigger. Oops. 11 by 1. And let's line it up properly to the grid. Sure, let's give that a shot. 6, 0. And then, oops. Gonna make sure this distance is the same for both of them. 2, -3.5. Now we just need this to be a little wider. So if you're wondering what I'm doing, in case you just got here, in case you hadn't seen before, I'm just setting up the colliders, so anything green is where the player can land, what the player can touch, basically. There's a key down here, and I set up the boundaries over there. So hazard again will exist. We had said, let's just check back to our drawing. Okay, we said in this corner it's just a little block, but we also want to make sure that this distance, like we said, is not big enough that you can jump. So let's try that out after we move the chain and lock. Let's see if this works. It should work. Alright. So chain and lock is done. Nails we can get rid of. The tennis ball shooters we can get rid of. That was from last level. Don't worry about it. So this one we're going to put right near the end. The reason for that is, like I said, we don't want that jump to be too small, so we want to make sure they can't make it. Um, again, we'll see when we test it what happens. Spike ball don't need. Great. Let's set up these projectile shooters. So we're going to turn them so that they're shooting downward. And we want them to be along this middle gray line. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but along this middle gray line, so that the player can't just hug the wall to get away from it. Make one more, also along this gray line, and we're going to put them at different intervals. So initial delay, if the interval is 1 second, the delay maybe will be 0.5. Then what we should get is they should be sort of taking turns, and you'll have to wall jump with them. Puzzle controller, so this is the object that we're using to decide which blocks the player is given. We're going to change this. We said we're going to start with 2, not 25. With 2, maybe let's give them, well, let's just see how it looks. So I'm going to put 2 big-ish blocks. That should make it easy to get through to the end. Now I just have to hope my Xbox controller didn't die. Nope, look, still alive. Great. So when we do in the actual game, it's gonna start zoomed out, so you'll be able to see the whole level. Sorry. So we don't have that kind of issue. So let's see if I get the lock, or if I get the key, then I'll be able to go up here, avoid that, maybe place this somewhere in the middle. Cool. Oops, I just killed myself. Actually, you know what? Let's try it without the lock. Let's see if it's possible. It looks like it is, but difficult. Yes. Very difficult. Good. Perfect. That's what we want, right? So if you're really good at the game, no problems. If you're not so good at the game, a little bit of problems. So let's try this. I shouldn't say not so good at the game. I should say if you're not quite as good at platformer, then you'll have some issues. Here, this is a little easier. So have to be careful there. And then we have to time the jump here. Now, I think if we just go for the long jump, we'll be able to make it. Yes. Good. But had we placed, well, it's not overly difficult. What we could do, place a block here to block the projectiles, and then it should be actually not too difficult. Yeah, so it's not so difficult. What are we going to do to make this more difficult? I definitely have an idea. Why don't we step it up a whole bunch? I hope I'm going to have time to do this. I should. Still got about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. We'll see. Maybe half an hour. All right, so let's step this up and get a little crazier. All right, let me know what you guys think about this. I'm going to change the size of this. I'm going to just draw it out so you see. Right. So I'm moving everything up. Here what I'll do, so we still want this down here to be death, so I'm going to just put this here, and that'll all be spikes. So you still have to choose if you want to use that key to go down. But then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put another key in there, and we're going to have another decision to make, which is going to be another choice of, you know, more difficult or more hard or easier. So the next thing we're going to try and do is coming down here, we will have a split, again going with the vertical split. Here there will be platform. Yeah, let's leave that open. Why not? Make it a little more difficult. So make sure this gap is long enough that you can't jump without a block. We're going to maybe, yeah, why not? Let's just mess with the player a little bit. Let's put this here. You'll see what I'm doing, or you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. We're going to put spikes here. The reason for that is that we don't want the player to come down this side wall, jump, land on the side wall, and just kind of slide along the side wall until a safe spot. So that's going to get them to not do that. Now, which one do we want to be the easy one? Which one do we want to be the hard one? That we will decide right now. Well, I'm thinking the hard one should be the more obvious route, which is the inside, and the easy one will be the further route. The easy one will be blocked by a chain. So now the player is starting to see that there's different, you can have two keys in one place, in one level, whatever. So let's stick a key up here, a second key. We can make that a different color or something later. That shouldn't be an issue. So I'm going to put that key over there, which means you're going to have to use another block to reach that. Over here, we're not going to make it super easy because, I don't know, we don't want to be too nice to the player, right? So why don't we put a couple of projectiles there. Not crazy difficult, but still something. And then here what we can do, this is something I've been wanting to try for a little while. We can place a block with spikes on it. Now this is not something the player is going to place. This is something that's going to be placed already, and it's going to move side to side. And then another one is going to do the same thing, move side to side, same thing. Now you're probably thinking that I'm extremely evil, and yes, a little bit. That's part of designing platformer games. But also we're trying to incentivize the player to get the lock. If they want to, great. If they don't want to, that's also great. There will be a bonus for not using all your blocks. So if you can manage to get to the end of the level without using all your blocks, then you'll get some bonus coins or bonus whatever. So we haven't really figured that out yet, but that's the idea. So I'm going to try and put this in Unity. We have part of it set up. We have this whole top section set up. That did not look very good. We have this section set up, and we want to put the rest in. So let's hop back into Unity. Now obviously we're going to need a much taller camera. So camera collider, let's put it up at Y. Let's put it up like this, and we're going to make it less wide because we really don't need it to be that wide. So how am I going to move everything? Let's try to move the colliders over by, actually let's just see how much first. So they have to move by, I'll just do it and then we'll see what happens. Move this over. Yeah, I'm gonna have to move it over more. Alright, I think that's, here, let's put this here. 16.56. Now the other thing is this background image should also be changed. So let's make that a little bit wider. And how much taller do we want this? Yeah, I guess we want it to be this tall. So I'm just scaling this background. Eventually, we're going to redo backgrounds in whatever size we want. So you see it's like stretching the image kind of weirdly, but that's fine for now. So we're also going to move these colliders up, including the start flag and including the arrow shooters. Let's just try and make it line up nicely. Okay, so I'm just setting up colliders in the scene. So I'm setting up the same way as I did before. And then we're going to add more interesting parts to the level. 3, 5. I'm putting them all to the grid because the way the blocks are placed is according to a grid, and we want the player to be able to place the blocks, you know, right up against the colliders or right up against whatever assets we have in the scene. So that's going to be the way we have to set up the blocks is according to this grid. Otherwise, they'll see gaps between the colliders and where they're allowed to place their blocks, which would be annoying. So let's just make this a little smaller, because we want it to line up here and down here, which it almost does. Oh, I think it did. I think I'm just crazy. Yeah. So 3, 5. Right, now I'm going to move the lock around. That is good. That's not open. Oh, I think I made these things a little too close. Let's see. Move these guys. Oops. No, I think that's good. So like we said, in this image we're going to make this bottom part a bit of a different shape. So maybe I'll actually make this a bit taller and make it one wider. Move it over. Again, according to the grid. And then, oops. This one will make wider, and we said we're going to put spikes down there anyway, so it doesn't really matter where I'm putting them. But you'll see it's still according to the grid. So, great. That's set up except for the spikes. Now the next part that we're going to try and do, I'm going to move the hazard down here. Boundary will make a lot bigger. .5. So I'm just lining up right now. I'm lining up the boundaries with the outside of the level so that we can not collide with them. All right, what else is there? The end of the level is going to be here. So you'll notice also, like in this design process, we started with something. It seemed interesting, but it was kind of lacking a little bit. Then we decided, all right, let's step it up and go to make something a little bit more intense that challenges the player a little more. So that's what we did. Now let's put in a new key and lock. Actually, no, let's set it up first. So now I'm just going to try and set up this area, this collider, and these projectiles. So you can see what I'm doing. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm doing level design for a one-player version of our game, which is Ultimate Chicken Horse. And the one-player version is a puzzle mode where you're given certain blocks and platforms to place in the platforming level, and you have to figure out where to place them and how to do so to be able to get to the end of the level. So what we're introducing today is a mechanic of a key and a lock, which you can see here in Unity. There's the key, and then if you get the key, then the lock disappears. So we're introducing ways to make that useful and ways to make that fun and interesting. So, as I was saying, let's continue on here. This may be a little bit less, it could be a little longer than that. We also said we were going to put a little 1x1 block here, which was going to have spikes on it. Because we're evil, and why the heck not? Great. What's next? Can make the platform on the bottom. Make it a little wider than that. Let's not be too evil, right? Alright, so next thing is we wanted to put a couple of projectile shooters. I'm going to angle them. Oh, sure, let's take the end of the level and stick it where it needs to go. Perfecto. Now the problem with this, the way we have it set up here, I don't know if you guys can guess what the problem is going to be, but the problem that you have here is that the things that are shooting projectiles are actually going to be a platform you can land on. That's not what we want to do, because that would be too easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this quite a bit smaller, and we're going to move it up. And what we'll do is we'll actually sort of sink this back into the wall. Same thing with this one. This way you'll be able to see it. Here, I'm just make this smaller. So you'll be able to see the projectiles, and you'll be able to try to avoid them, but you won't be able to stand on the actual projectile shooting device. Okay, so that's set up. So now we've got this section set up. We need to put the lock and the key though. So why don't we copy paste this lock thing, and we're going to rename it lock 2. So we're also going to copy paste this and copy paste this guy. So now it covers the whole span of where we want it to be covered. And then we're going to take another key, so we can actually copy paste this one if I can find it. And we're going to call this key number 2. It's obviously important to have these things properly named, otherwise we'll get really confused. And we have to make sure that this key is associated with lock number 2, not lock number 1, because otherwise we'll probably get all sorts of issues. Now I hope this works. I'm not sure if there'll be some crazy bugs that happen, but let's test it out for now with the stuff that we're given. Am I missing something? Have to turn my controller on. Apart from that, I don't think I'm missing anything. Alrighty, let's give this a shot. So I didn't put the spikes here, so we can actually get the key without wasting a block, which is fine for now. I'll put this here to get the other block, and then we'll just put this here so we can get to the end of the level. So you can see here that collider's a bit big, but you can see I can't go through where the block is. If I do this, sorry, where the lock is. If I do this, I can get up to the top. Now I'm going to try to time myself accordingly. Great. Now you saw if I go down, then the lock is still going to be there. Hopefully this will make it disappear. Yes, it does. And now we have, well, on the right side we haven't set it up yet, but we're going to have something difficult. On the left side we have these projectiles that are being shot. Great. And then we got to the end of the level. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now we're going to set up the difficult part. Actually, first we said we're going to put a line, yeah, we're going to put a collider here, which I have not done yet. So actually I'm going to make this one bigger, call it 12. And yeah, the reason we're putting this there is because we don't want the player to be able to just pass through. Here, I'll show it over here. We don't want the player to be able to just like pass right through. Actually, I'll do it already. We don't want the player to be able to pass through here and avoid this whole mess. So we're kind of forcing them into going down this way. But like you see in the drawing, there's a little bit of leeway, so you can kind of, you could place your block here. You don't have to worry too much about getting down, jumping across. Honestly, it doesn't really make any difference, but I'm going to make this a little shorter to be able to show that you can do that. Cool. Alright, now the complicated thing is going to be doing those spiky moving blocks. The cool thing about the setup of this game is because all of the pieces are very modular, it's easy to do crazy kind of makeshift things with pieces we already have. So without necessarily like hard coding all sorts of new blocks, we can use a lot of the ones we have and just move them around in interesting ways. So the one I'm going to show you is a not so complicated example where I'll just close this stuff. Just put this stuff all on the level. Now, what I'm going to do is a fan platform. So this fan platform moves up and down, or if you turn it sideways, it moves side to side. So let me just show you that in the level. So if I just go back to the start, you can see it. Alright, so that moves side to side until it hits something, or a maximum of a certain number of a certain distance, which you can see here in max distance. Alright, or it goes until it hits something. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as a basis for our crazy moving blocks. And I'm going to take a platform and I'm going to put it, well here, let's put fan platform at 0, 0, 0. This is just going to be to get the positioning right. So this platform we're also going to put in 0, 0, 0. And we're actually going to put this platform as like as a child object of fan platform. Then what that means is that any of the behaviors that are associated to fan platform, which is the moving side to side, are going to be associated to the plank. So what I'm going to then do is turn off the collision and turn off the rendering, so so you can't see the image and you can't collide with it for the fan platform and for the fan. Sorry, just probably brought water up here. Anyway, I'm going to do that. So now what we should see is, wait, I did not connect my controller. What we should see is that this platform is going to move side to side. It doesn't happen until I start placing things, but yeah. Great. So that's exactly what we want. But what we're also going to do is we're going to put some spikes on that, right? Because we don't want it to be too easy. And we're going to put those spikes inside fan platform. And now we'll have the same kind of thing. Those schematic. So now we have an object that will move side to side. You can move it all together. Now, what we're setting up here might be completely impossible. It's quite probable, in fact. So let's just try two of them. I'm just going to copy paste that object so I have another one. And we're going to move that off a little bit. No, that's going to be way too hard. That'll be a little bit better. Now, I believe they're both going to start by moving to the left, and then they're going to bounce off. So you'll have them kind of going back and forth. Let's see. Here, I'll just do this to block these as a kind of easy way, or a way to go quickly. Okay, so now we have this thing happening, which is pretty awesome, although they're not colliding with the colliders. So maybe we can, it's actually kind of strange that they're colliding on the left but not colliding on the right. Let's just see. I'm going to test this out by actually taking, this is another thing that we kind of do, is I'll take the start and I'll move it to somewhere further in the level so I don't have to wait. Yeah, okay, so they start moving to the right, and then they're only moving a certain amount. I'm pretty sure there's a way to make them collide Maybe if this is probably going to explode everything, but let's try anyway. No, that didn't actually do anything. Okay, that's fine. So this one, I'm going to make it move. We can also speed it up a little bit, make it a little more difficult. Max instance will be 3. So let's test that. Now it should only move 3 blocks, and it should be a little faster. Perfect. The other one is still giving us issues, so why don't we actually we could be kind of clever. Make it move -3. Again, I'm not sure if it's set up this way or if that's going to give us all sorts of problems, but let's see what happens. Nope, it's bugging out and being crazy. That's fine. So why don't we put this as 3? What we're actually going to do is I'm going to spin around this object to 270, and then I'm going to spin around the sub-objects to be 90 and 90. And I'm going to move it up. Oops. -1, which makes sense. And now we'll see if that works. This is kind of clever ways of, yeah, perfect. So that's not exceedingly difficult. I mean, if I can do it like that, probably means it's too easy, right? Right. So let's make it more difficult. Move speed 3 maybe? Let's see what happens here. That's a little more difficult. Perfect. So now we just have to decide, I'm going to save this before my computer crashes and explodes. Now we just have to decide what blocks we're giving to the player. So that's a pretty important decision, obviously. And actually, we also have to put some more spikes and things. Let's put some nails, some more nails, and some more nails. This one will be 11, -2, 17, -2, and all three of these guys kinetic. Cool, so that works obviously. Then we'll put those little spikes, like we had said, in that annoying place. That's also a thing that a player might go down and just assume that that's okay and start sliding down that wall, because you keep in mind they can't see what's below them at that point, right? So the player might just slide down and then die, and then sort of like instant death, and they're not expecting it, but then they realize, oh, that makes sense, okay, I know I have to either wall jump off it or do something else. So what's next? Yeah, we have to figure out which blocks we're giving the player. So we want to give them a means. We want it to be possible for the player to reach the end. Let's go back to the Photoshop drawing for a second. We want it to be possible for the player to reach the end with placing a block here. Actually, change the color. So we want it to be possible placing a block here, placing at least one block here, right? Because this way they'll get the key, get the other key. And then this one, they need at least one more block here. Okay, so minimum of 3 if you're going the key route. If you're not going the key route, you don't use the keys at all, you don't actually only need 1. So the thing is, maybe, yeah, here, let's go not the key route, we'll make it green. So you can avoid the projectiles and do everything you want, and you can get through this crazy spiky area, and then you actually only need 1, which would be here, to get to the end of the level. But probably if you're doing that, or if you're kind of thinking smartly about it, you're going to put another one here to block the projectiles. That's going to make your life easier. And then you could actually place one here. Right now it's not colliding properly, but we'll make it collide properly, so that you could actually, the moving spike thing will actually hit the end, and then you can sneak through this way. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that well. Hopefully you can. Anyway, so I think that makes us reach the decision of having 3 blocks. Now, which blocks do we want? That can be completely up to us. How evil we want to be, how not evil we want to be. That's our choice. Let's first of all organize things so that everything that needs to be in the level is in the level. Okay, it's a little easier. Now we're going to give ourselves 3 blocks. One of them, I think we should be nice. Let's give it a 4, and the reason for that is because it makes it easy when you're dropping down to get this key. It also makes it easy to block these things if you want, and it also makes it easy as a jump to get over here to this key. Now, being a little more evil, let's give something else. How about a let's give them one small block, which can be used either at the end or it can be used to block one of these moving guys. And let's see what happens. How about a flipping block? All right. So a flipping block, which we haven't seen yet, is a block that flips up and down and has spikes on the top or on the bottom, depending on what flipping point it's at, or if it's flipped or not. So somebody just asked if the game will have magnets. I'm not sure. The reason for that is because playing with the physics is a lot harder than making separate assets that can do things like move back and forth or shoot projectiles, etc. So it'll depend. I haven't included anything about like icy blocks or anything yet because we haven't worked on those side of things. So we haven't created blocks that will actually like push the player or pull the player. Once we do that, then we could definitely consider something like magnets that will pull the player away, or even even that could pull other things. Come to think of it, we could make it such that the magnets. This is kind of crazy. I'm not going to commit to this, but we could make it so that the magnets could kind of pull up nails. So maybe there's somebody placed in the multiplayer mode, somebody placed a nail in a difficult spot, and you want to get rid of it. You could actually just pull it away with the magnet instead of using a bomb to destroy it. You could put a magnet there, and then it would pull it onto the magnet, and you'd end up with this just like big spiky ball of death because the magnet has pulled all sorts of things off it. But yes, we could also use it as something that will, like gravity, that will pull the player. So let's give this one a shot. My controller's dying again. Alright, let's give it a shot. So, so the flipping block, like I said, is this. That I think is going to be the most difficult one to use. So I'm going to put it down here because we know we can see it, right? In the other cases, if it's down here, you're not sure you can see it from the start. And if it was over here, well, you can see it, but it's going to be difficult because of these projectiles. So I'm going to try and go the key route, and I'm going to put this one down here, and then I'm going to put this one over here. So now I know because I got the key, this part's going to be easier. It's not necessarily that easy. Alright. Oops. Nice. So I went down there. That's another thing, is once you get the magnet, once you get the key, you're also, I think, going to realize that those projectiles, I should not have just killed myself, those projectiles can still hit you. So you do have to be a little bit careful in how you're landing, right? Because the lock's going to be gone, but those projectiles are down there. So let's try and set up the same thing, considering I just messed up. And try this. Of course, this will be after wall jumping is introduced, because that's necessary. And let's try and time ourselves. Perfect. Nice is flipping block, flipping quite quickly. It's very dangerous. So, nice. Perfect. I like it. I'm surprisingly impressed. I'm not usually that good at games, especially platformers. But this one I seem to be getting the hang of. I assume by the time we launch it, I've played so many hours of this game that it's gonna be ridiculous. And then, sure enough, someone's gonna come along and be way better and do some speed run of the game and completely show the developers up like crazy. But hey, I welcome it. If you can do it, go ahead. So I think that is all for today. I'm just going to do a quick recap in case, well, for the YouTube video and in case you guys weren't here for the whole time. So we did, the one-player mode of this game is a puzzle platformer where you place blocks in the level and figure out how to get to the end. And the whole basis of the game is that you build the level as you play. So what we did today is we looked at introducing a new mechanic, which was the key and lock mechanic. So you can see here the key and lock. When you get the key, it gets rid of the lock. That can lead us to all sorts of different fun mechanics, rewards based on. Basically, you want to be rewarded based on what you're doing. That's one of the sort of bases of game design, right? So if you're going to get the key, you want to get some reward for it. So in this case, the reward is it gets easier if you get the key. The disadvantage is if you get the key, then you have to spend an extra block. So it's almost like managing your I guess you could call them resources, in order to play the game efficiently and well. So that's what we did today. Next week we'll be back same time at noon. Tell your friends. And we'll be introducing another mechanic. I'm not sure which one yet, but we'll be introducing a new mechanic, and we might do a little bit of multiplayer play. I'm not sure. We're going to try and see, well, we're going to see what we want to do. So that is all, and I'm going to sign off, but thanks for tuning in, and you can check out our website. I'm just going to put the link in there again. The link will be also in the YouTube video, and yeah, check us out. Feel free to get in touch if you have any ideas for cool new block ideas, or any sort of interesting game mechanics. Feel free to either come on the Twitch and talk to us, or send us an email on the contact page of our website, or add us on Twitter, etc., etc. Go for it. So happy Friday, and it was good twitching with you guys. See ya.